They forced her to stay in the closet during dinner until the millionaire came home. Emily held her breath inside the pantry closet, her small eyes glued to the crack in the door as she watched the Anderson family dine in the elegant room next door. The aroma of roasted lamb reached her, making her empty stomach growl softly, but she knew she couldn't make a sound. Then she heard Mrs. Jennifer, the wife of the eldest son, whisper something that made her blood run cold. "Dr. William returns tomorrow from Europe. You all know what that means. The girl cannot be here when he arrives." Little Emily, just 9 years old, didn't fully understand what those words meant, but the threatening tone in Jennifer's voice made her tremble. For 3 years, she had lived in that mansion in the Upper East Side of New York City ever since her mother, Catherine, had left, promising to return soon. But days turned into months, and months into years of loneliness and fear. "Mother, you're overreacting," murmured Michael, Dr. William's son. "The girl hasn't done anything wrong." "Nothing wrong." Jennifer slammed her fork onto the plate forcefully. "She's the living proof that your sister dishonored this family. If your father finds out we've been raising Catherine's bastard, forget about the inheritance." The words cut Emily's heart like knives. Bastard. She had heard that word whispered in the hallways many times, but never understood its meaning until now. Her tears began to fall silently as she curled up even tighter in the cramped space between the pantry shelves. Mrs. Martha, the housekeeper who had cared for her since she was little, entered the room carrying dessert. She was the only person in that house who showed Emily any kindness, always leaving a hidden plate of food for her after everyone had gone to sleep. "Would you like me to serve the pudding now, Mrs. Jennifer?" Martha asked in her gentle voice, but Emily noticed the strain in her tone. "Serve it quickly and get out of my sight," Jennifer snapped, "and make sure that child isn't here by mistake tomorrow. If necessary, take her to your house." Emily's heart raced. Being taken to Martha's house, did that mean she'd never see the grandfather she barely knew? Dr. William Anderson, whom everyone spoke of with a mix of respect and fear, was a prosperous businessman who owned several textile factories. He traveled constantly to Europe for business, and Emily only knew him from the photos scattered around the house and the stories Martha told when no one was listening. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Martha carefully opened the pantry door and found Emily curled up like a wounded little bird. The girl's eyes were red and swollen from crying silently for so long. "Come, my dear," Martha whispered, holding out her arms. "Let's go to the kitchen. I saved a plate for you." Emily slowly stepped out of the closet, her legs numb from the uncomfortable position. Martha took her by the hand and led her to the kitchen, where a plate covered with a clean cloth waited on the counter. It was just a small portion of rice and chicken, but to Emily, it was a feast. "Aunt Martha," Emily said between small bites, trying to make it last, "why do they hate me so much? What did I do wrong?" Martha's heart ached. How could she explain to a 9-year-old that she was considered a disgrace to that family? How could she tell her that her mother had fallen in love with a man who wasn't accepted by the wealthy and traditional Anderson family? "You didn't do anything wrong, my dear." Martha stroked Emily's curly hair. "Sometimes adults make bad choices, and children end up paying for them." "Will my mom come back?" Emily asked in a voice so small Martha could barely hear. "I don't know, sweetheart, but while you're here, I'll take care of you. That's a promise." Martha had worked for the Anderson family for over 20 years. She had arrived young, hired by Dr. William's late wife, Mrs. Evelyn, a kind woman who treated all the staff with respect. After Evelyn passed away from cancer, the house was never the same. The doctor withdrew into himself, throwing himself into his business, while Michael married Jennifer, an ambitious woman who cared only for money and social status. Catherine, Dr. William's youngest daughter, had always been different from the rest of the family. She had a generous heart and dreamed of being a teacher, but her father wanted her to marry some well-bred heir. When she fell in love with Daniel, a mechanic from a humble background, the family erupted in arguments that lasted for hours. Martha remembered the last fight, 3 years ago, when Catherine revealed she was expecting Daniel's baby. Dr. William was furious, shouting that she was dishonoring the family name. Michael and Jennifer took advantage of the situation to further poison their father against his sister. In the end, Catherine left the house, promising to return when her father changed his mind. Months later, she came back alone without Daniel, cradling little Emily in her arms. She was weak and pale, but Dr. William had traveled to Europe and wasn't home. Jennifer and Michael greeted her coldly, making it clear she wasn't welcome. Catherine begged to stay just a few weeks until her father returned, but they refused to listen. It was Martha who saw Catherine leave for the last time, leaving Emily in her care with a sealed letter and a small golden locket around the girl's neck. In the letter, Catherine asked for forgiveness and said she needed to settle some things but would return for her daughter soon. That was 3 years ago, and Martha kept that letter like a treasure, waiting for the day she could give it to Dr. William. The next morning, the house was in an uproar preparing for the patriarch's arrival. Jennifer ordered all the plants watered, the furniture polished, and the curtains washed. She wanted everything perfect to impress her father-in-law and ensure he still saw her as the exemplary daughter-in-law. "Martha, you're taking the girl to your house today," Jennifer commanded as she oversaw the cleaning of the main room. "I can't risk my father-in-law finding out we've been sheltering that child." "But Mrs. Jennifer, Dr. William has the right to know he has a granddaughter," Martha dared to say, immediately regretting it when she saw the withering glare she received. "You don't get an opinion here," Jennifer snapped. "Do as I say or find another job." Martha lowered her head, pretending submission, but inside she was boiling with anger. She knew Jennifer well enough to understand the woman was capable of anything to protect her interests. For the 3 years she had cared for Emily, Martha had been forced to hide the child whenever there were important visitors or when letters from lawyers arrived discussing inheritance matters. Emily spent the morning helping Martha tidy her small attic room. The girl had learned to be invisible, to walk silently through the halls and hide quickly whenever she heard unfamiliar voices. It was a sad life for any child, but Emily had adapted with the premature wisdom of those forced to grow up too fast. "Aunt Martha, do you think my grandfather will like me?" asked Emily, as she folded her few clothes into a small suitcase. "Anyone with a heart would love you, my dear," replied Martha, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your grandfather just needs to get to know you better. But what if he's like Uncle Michael and Aunt Jennifer? What if he doesn't want me here either?" Martha stopped what she was doing and knelt in front of Emily, holding her small hands. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, Emily. You're a special girl, the daughter of a brave woman who fought for love. No matter what anyone says about you, always remember you have just as much right to be here as anyone else in this family." Martha's words gave Emily a courage she didn't know she had. For the first time in 3 years, she wondered why she should hide. Why should she be ashamed of existing? That house had belonged to her mother too, and now it was rightfully hers. The sound of tires on the driveway announced the arrival of a car. Martha rushed to the window and saw a uniformed driver unloading suitcases from the trunk of a gleaming black Mercedes. Her heart raced. Dr. William had arrived earlier than expected. "Emily, come here quick," Martha called, but when she turned around, the girl was no longer in the room. Downstairs, Jennifer had hurried to greet her father-in-law at the front door, her most rehearsed smile plastered on her face. Michael appeared too, nervously adjusting his tie. They hadn't expected him to arrive ahead of schedule. "Welcome back, Dad," said Michael, kissing his father on the cheek. "How was the trip?" "Exhausting," replied Dr. William in his deep, authoritative voice. At 62, he was still an imposing man, with neatly combed grey hair and always impeccable suits. "I closed 3 major deals in London, but what I really want is to rest at home." "I made your favorite dish for dinner," Jennifer said in a syrupy voice. "Grilled salmon with that sauce you love so much." "Excellent. Now let me take a bath and rest a bit. At 8 o'clock sharp, we'll all be at the table as usual." As Dr. William climbed the stairs to his room, Jennifer and Michael exchanged nervous glances. They urgently needed to find Emily and Martha. The girl absolutely could not appear during dinner. Martha searched the entire house for Emily but couldn't find her. The girl had simply vanished, as if she had dissolved into thin air. What Martha didn't know was that Emily had overheard the conversation about her grandfather's arrival and made a bold decision. The little girl was hiding under the guest room bed, where she could see her grandfather's feet walking in the next room. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared he might hear it. For the first time in her life, she was about to meet the man she had heard so much about. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. Dinner was served promptly at 8 in the elegant dining room of the Anderson residence. The mahogany table gleamed under the crystal chandelier, and the finest porcelain had been carefully arranged. Jennifer wore her most expensive dress, and Martha had spent the entire afternoon preparing every detail of the meal. Dr. William sat at the head of the table, as he always did. He seemed relaxed after his bath, but Martha, who had known him for years, noticed a certain melancholy in his eyes. His trips had become more frequent lately, as if he were running from something. "So, how are things here?" Dr. William asked, as Martha served the first course. "Everything's just fine, Dad," Michael replied quickly. "The regional company is doing well, and Jennifer has been a great help with the social events." "That's good. And Martha, how are you? I noticed you've lost some weight." Martha nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. "I'm all right, Dr. William. Just a little tired with age." "Nonsense, you're still a young woman. But if you're not feeling well, you can see a doctor. I'll cover all your expenses. You know that." The unexpected kindness from her employer moved Martha deeply. Unlike Jennifer and Michael, Dr. William had always treated her with respect and consideration. That's what made everything even harder. How could she explain to him that his granddaughter had spent 3 years living like a prisoner in her own home? The dinner continued with talk about business and plans for the next quarter. Jennifer mentioned the renovations she wanted for the garden, and Michael brought up a stock investment he was considering. Everything was perfectly civilized and normal, until Dr. William asked a question that completely shifted the mood at the table. "By the way, any news about Catherine?" The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jennifer turned pale and Michael choked on the water he was drinking. Martha stopped clearing the plates and froze, waiting for the answer she knew wouldn't come. "No, Dad," Michael finally said, his voice hoarse. "No news." "It's been over 3 years," Dr. William murmured, more to himself than to the others. "Sometimes I wonder if I was too hard on her." "You did what you thought was right at the time," Jennifer said, trying to sound comforting, but Martha heard the nervousness in her voice. "Did I really?" Dr. William sighed deeply. "Catherine was my youngest, my little princess. Maybe I should have tried to understand her situation better." Just then, a faint noise came from the pantry, almost imperceptible, like someone had bumped into something. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, but when it didn't repeat, they returned to the conversation. Martha, however, knew exactly what it was. Emily was hiding in the pantry, probably starving and terrified. The housekeeper tried to think of a way to distract the family so she could bring the girl food, but Jennifer was watching her like a hawk. "Martha, could you serve dessert?" Jennifer asked with a strained smile. "Of course, Mrs. Jennifer." As Martha headed to the kitchen, she quickly passed by the pantry and whispered for Emily to stay quiet, promising to bring food as soon as possible. The girl replied in an even softer whisper, "I want to meet my grandfather." Martha's heart nearly stopped. "No, Emily, not now. It's dangerous." "But he was talking about my mother. He misses her. Maybe he'd miss me too, even if he doesn't know me." Martha returned to the dining room with a heavy heart. How could a 9-year-old be so wise? Emily was right. Dr. William clearly regretted how he'd treated Catherine, and maybe he could love his granddaughter if he knew she existed. Dessert was served amid forced conversation about the weather and local news. Dr. William ate in silence, lost in thoughts that seemed heavy and painful. Every now and then, he glanced at Catherine's empty chair as if expecting her to appear at any moment. "Dad, are you all right?" Michael asked, noticing his father's melancholy. "I'm just thinking," Dr. William replied. "You know, during my trip to Europe, I visited some places your mother and I used to take Catherine when she was little. It made me realize how fast time flies. and how we waste precious moments fighting over things that aren't worth it. Mrs. Jennifer coughed nervously and quickly changed the subject. Did you see the renovations we made to the east wing of the house? It looks very modern now. Renovations? Dr. William raised his eyebrows. I don't recall authorizing any renovations. They were just small adjustments, Dad, Michael interjected. Nothing too expensive, we just modernized a few unused rooms. Which rooms? The pink room, the one that belonged to Catherine, and the little one next to it that she used as a studio, Mrs. Jennifer said quickly. They were too full of sad memories. Dr. William's face hardened. You touched Catherine's room without asking me? We thought it would be for the best, Michael murmured. To help you move on. Move on? Dr. William's voice rose. Who said I wanted to move on? That room was all I had left of my daughter. The atmosphere grew tense and uncomfortable. Martha took advantage of the commotion to hide in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, but actually listening to the argument. She had always known Dr. William regretted fighting with Catherine, but she had never seen such a clear display of his feelings. I'm sorry, Dad, Michael said quietly. We didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me. Dr. William slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. You erased the last memories I had of my daughter. At that moment, another noise came from the pantry, louder this time. It sounded like someone had knocked something over. Everyone turned toward the sound and Dr. William stood up from his chair. What was that noise? Probably just a cat, Mrs. Jennifer said quickly. Sometimes they come in through the kitchen window. A cat? We've never had cats in this house. Dr. William walked toward the kitchen. Martha, is there an animal in there? Martha appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hands trembling. No, Dr. William, I didn't see any animal. Then I'll check what that noise was, Mrs. Jennifer and Michael exchanged panicked glances. If Dr. William found Emily, all their plans to keep the secret would be ruined. Mrs. Jennifer tried to stop him, but he was already determinedly heading toward the pantry. When Dr. William opened the pantry door, he found Emily crouched between the shelves, her eyes wide with fear, a broken jar of jam at her feet. The girl was wearing the little yellow dress Martha had sewn for her, and the small golden locket around her neck glimmered in the dim light. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the man and the child stared at each other in silence. Dr. William felt as if he were seeing a ghost. The girl had the same big, expressive eyes as Catherine, the same curly hair, the same delicate features. Who are you? Dr. William asked softly, bending down to her level. Emily looked past him and saw Mrs. Jennifer and Michael frozen in the kitchen doorway, their faces filled with terror. Martha stood beside them, tears streaming down her face. The girl took a deep breath and found courage within herself. My name is Emily, she said in a timid but steady voice. I'm Aunt Catherine's daughter. I think you're my grandfather. Dr. William's world crumbled and rebuilt itself in that instant. He looked at the locket around the girl's neck and recognized it immediately. It was the same one he had given Catherine on her 16th birthday, engraved with the words "For my princess" on the back. How long have you been here? He asked, still trying to process the information. 3 years, Emily replied, and then, with the brutal honesty of children, added, I used to hide in the closet during dinners because Aunt Jennifer said you'd be angry if you saw me. Dr. William turned slowly to look at Mrs. Jennifer and Michael. His eyes burned with a fury Martha had never seen before. He rose slowly, carefully picked up Emily in his arms and walked back to the dining room. Sit down, he ordered, and the tone of his voice brooked no disobedience. Mrs. Jennifer and Michael sat like scolded children, while Martha stood by the kitchen door, wringing her hands nervously. Dr. William took his seat at the head of the table, with Emily in his lap, and for a few moments simply observed the family in silence. 3 years, he finally said. For 3 years, you hid my granddaughter's existence from me. Dad, let me explain, Michael began, but was cut off by a sharp gesture from his father. I don't want explanations now. I want answers, and I want the truth. Emily nestled into her grandfather's lap, feeling safe for the first time in years. The scent of his expensive cologne and the firmness of his arms comforted her in a way she couldn't explain. "Where is Catherine?" Dr. William asked, staring directly at Mrs. Jennifer. "We don't know, Mrs. Jennifer replied, but her voice trembled. "You don't know, or you don't want to tell me?" "We truly don't know, Dr. William," Martha said, finding the courage to speak. "Mrs. Catherine brought Emily here 3 years ago, left a letter, and said she'd return soon. We haven't heard from her since." "A letter?" Dr. William looked at Martha. "What letter?" Martha glanced at Mrs. Jennifer, who shook her head slightly, but the housekeeper ignored her. "It's kept in my room, Dr. William. Mrs. Catherine asked me to give it to you when you returned from your trip. Bring that letter immediately." As Martha hurried upstairs to fetch the letter, Dr. William held Emily's small hands in his. The girl was small for her age, clearly undernourished, and there was a sadness in her eyes no child should carry. "You've been suffering here, haven't you?" he asked softly. Emily hesitated for a moment, glancing at Mrs. Jennifer, but then nodded. "Sometimes. But Aunt Martha always took care of me." "And where do you sleep?" "In the little attic room with Aunt Martha." "The attic?" Dr. William's voice dropped dangerously low. "My granddaughter has been living in the attic of my own house." Mrs. Jennifer tried to defend herself. "It was temporary until we found a better solution." "A better solution?" "The solution was to tell me the truth from the very beginning." Martha rushed back with the letter in hand, still sealed after 3 years. Dr. William took the envelope and immediately recognized Catherine's delicate handwriting. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the yellowed paper. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The letter read, "Dearest Dad, if you're reading this letter, it means you've already met Emily, your granddaughter. I know you must be angry with me for not telling you sooner, but I needed time to think and get my life in order. Daniel left me a few months after he found out I was expecting. He said he wasn't ready to be a father and that I deserved someone better. I wanted to come home then, but Michael and Mrs. Jennifer told me you were still too upset and that it would be better if I waited a little longer. I'm very sick, Dad. The doctors said I need long-term treatment and I can't care for Emily during that time. That's why I brought her home where I know she'll be loved and protected. She's a special girl, with your generous heart and Mom's intelligence. Forgive me for all the pain I've caused. I just wanted to be happy, but maybe I chose the wrong path. Please take care of my little princess until I return. I promise I'll return as soon as I'm well. With all my love, Catherine P.S. The locket she wears was the gift you gave me for my 16th birthday. I want her to know where it came from and how loved she is." Dr. William finished reading the letter with tears streaming down his face. Emily, who had been quietly sitting on his lap, turned to look at him with concern. "Are you sad, Grandpa?" The word Grandpa pierced Dr. William's heart like an arrow. He hugged the girl tightly, as if wanting to shield her from all past suffering. "I am sad, but also very happy to have met you, my princess," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Very, very happy." Then he turned to Mrs. Jennifer and Michael with an expression that left no doubt about his fury. "Did you know Catherine was sick?" "We knew she wasn't well," Michael admitted reluctantly. "But we thought it was just an excuse to come back home." "An excuse?" Dr. William stood up, still holding Emily. "My daughter was sick and needed help, and you sent her away." "We didn't send her away," Mrs. Jennifer said defensively. "We just said it would be better for her to wait until you returned from your trip." "What trip? I came back 3 days later. Why didn't you tell me she had been here?" The silence that followed was telling. Mrs. Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances, knowing there was no way to hide the truth anymore. Because we were afraid," Mrs. Jennifer finally admitted. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid you'd forgive Catherine and change the will," Michael said, lowering his head in shame. The confession fell like a bomb in the room. Dr. William was silent for a long moment, processing the monstrosity of what he had just heard. His own family had denied help to Catherine when she was sick, all because of money. "Get out," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "Dad, let us explain." "Get out!" Dr. William shouted, startling Emily in his arms. "Leave my house immediately. I don't want to see you for another minute." "But Our home, our thing, Mrs. Jennifer began. Mrs. Jennifer, this is my house. Your things will be packed and at the door by tomorrow morning. Now leave before I call security. Michael tried to argue once more, but his father's glare silenced him. He and Mrs. Jennifer left the room quietly, heading upstairs to pack. Martha stood in the kitchen doorway, unsure whether to stay or go as well. Martha, Dr. William called, his voice gentle again. Did you know about all this? I knew they were hiding Emily from you, but I didn't know about Miss Catherine being sick or the real reasons, Martha answered honestly. I tried to tell you many times, but Mrs. Jennifer always threatened to fire me. Why didn't you tell me anyway? You know I would have protected you. I was afraid, Dr. William. Afraid of losing my job and not being able to take care of Emily anymore. She had no one else. Dr. William understood Martha's dilemma. The housekeeper had sacrificed her own peace to protect Emily the only way she could. She was a brave woman disguised as a coward. You did what you could, Martha, and I'm grateful for that, but now things will be different. Dr. William carried Emily to his study and sat her in the leather chair behind the desk. The girl looked tiny in the large seat, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she took in the books and papers scattered around the room. Emily, I need to find your mother, he said, kneeling in front of the chair. Do you remember anything she might have said about where she was going? Any doctor's name or hospital? Emily thought for a moment, biting her lower lip as she always did when concentrating. She talked about a place with lots of flowers, and she said she'd be away for a while to get better again. A place with lots of flowers? Dr. William tried to decipher the clue. Could it be a hospital? A sanatorium? I don't know, Grandpa. I was very little when she left. Dr. William picked up the phone and started calling hospitals and clinics in the area. With every "we have no records" he received, his heart sank further. Where could his daughter be? Why hadn't she returned as promised? After 2 hours of frustrating calls, Martha appeared at the office door with a cup of hot chocolate for Emily and coffee for Dr. William. Dr. William, may I say something? Of course, Martha. Mrs. Catherine mentioned once before she left about a place in the countryside where her aunt used to go for treatment. I think it was in Woodstock. She said it was a peaceful place with beautiful gardens. Woodstock? Dr. William picked up the phone again. I'll call every clinic and hospital there. The first call yielded no results, nor did the second. But on the third, to Pine Grove Wellness Center, a nurse said, Please hold for a moment. I'll check our old records. Dr. William held his breath as he waited. Emily had fallen asleep in the armchair, emotionally exhausted from the intense day. Martha tucked a blanket around her and stood nearby like a silent guardian. Sir? The nurse's voice returned to the line. We had a patient named Catherine Anderson admitted here 2 years ago. She was in our treatment program for severe depression and stress-related health issues. Dr. William's heart raced. Is she still there? No, sir. She was discharged about 1.5 years ago, but I can check if she left any contact information. Please, I really need to find her. After a few minutes that felt like hours, the nurse returned. She left an address in Poughkeepsie. She was working as a teacher at a public school there. Dr. William wrote down the address and thanked her profusely. He looked at Emily sleeping and made a decision. They would travel to Poughkeepsie the next morning to find Catherine. The house felt strangely quiet after Michael and Mrs. Jennifer left. Martha prepared the master bedroom for Emily, using the prettiest sheets and placing fresh flowers on the nightstand. It was the first time in 3 years the girl had slept in a real bed, in a warm and comfortable room. Dr. William sat in a chair beside the bed, watching his granddaughter sleep. She looked so fragile and small, yet there was a quiet strength in her that amazed him. How had a 9-year-old survived 3 years of rejection and mistreatment while keeping her sweetness intact? The next morning, they left early for Poughkeepsie. Emily was radiant in the back seat of the car, wearing a new dress Martha had bought her the day before. It was light blue with small white flowers, and the girl felt like a princess. Grandpa, do you think Mommy will be happy to see me? Emily asked during the trip. I'm sure she will, my princess. She must have been waiting for you all this time. What if she doesn't recognize me? I've grown so much. Don't worry. A mother always recognizes her child no matter how much time has passed. The public school in Poughkeepsie was a simple but well-kept building with a courtyard full of playing children. Dr. William parked the car and held Emily's hand, feeling her tremble slightly with nerves. At the front desk, a kind woman greeted them. "How can I help you?" "We're looking for a teacher named Catherine Anderson," said Dr. William. The secretary smiled. "Teacher Catherine. She's one of our best teachers. She's currently teaching 3rd grade. Would you like me to call her?" "If it's not too much trouble." "Of course not. I'll call her right away." While they waited, Emily hid behind her grandfather, suddenly shy at the prospect of reuniting with her mother. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. Footsteps approached down the hallway, and then a familiar voice said, "Sorry for the delay. I was finishing up an activity with the children. How can I—" Catherine stopped mid-sentence when she saw Dr. William. For a moment, father and daughter stood in silence, 3 years of separation and hurt weighing between them. Catherine looked thinner, with worry lines around her eyes, but she was still the same kind-hearted young woman he remembered. "Dad," she whispered, disbelieving. "Hi, Catherine. What? How did you—" It was then that Emily stepped out from behind her grandfather, shy but brave. Catherine saw her, and her legs nearly gave way. She knelt on the floor and opened her arms, and Emily rushed into them like a bird returning to its nest. "My baby!" Catherine laughed and cried at the same time, covering her daughter's face in kisses. "You've grown so much, you're so beautiful." "Mommy, I knew you'd come back." Emily hugged her mother with all her strength. "Grandpa found me and brought me to you." Catherine looked up at her father over her daughter's head, and he saw a world of gratitude in her eyes. "Dad, We'll talk later," Dr. Williams said gently. "Right now it's time for you two to be together." The school secretary, moved by the scene, offered her office so the family could have privacy. Catherine asked someone to cover her class for the rest of the day and sat in a small chair with Emily in her lap, struggling to believe this was real. "Why didn't you come home?" Dr. William asked. "I tried, Dad, so many times. But Michael and Mrs. Jennifer always said you were still too angry with me. They told me it was better to wait a little longer. And you believed them? I was so confused and sick back then, I couldn't think straight. And then I was ashamed. I thought you'd be even more disappointed if you knew Daniel had abandoned me." Dr. William stepped closer and took his daughter's hands, the same delicate hands he remembered from her childhood. "Catherine, I made a terrible mistake 3 years ago. I let pride and expectations speak louder than love. You're my daughter, and nothing you do or don't do will ever change that. Dad, I'm so sorry I let you down. No, sweetheart, I'm the one who should apologize. For being too proud to see you just wanted to be happy. For letting others decide our family's future. For missing 3 years of my granddaughter's life." Emily looked back and forth between them, trying to understand the adults' conversation, but sensing something important was happening, something that meant they'd never be separated again. "Are you all staying together now?" she asked in her hopeful little voice. Catherine and Dr. William looked at each other and smiled at the same time. It was the first genuine smile they'd shared in years. "Yes, my princess," Dr. William said. "We're staying together. Forever." That afternoon, they returned to New York City as a reunited family. Catherine had resigned from the school, explaining she needed to go home for family reasons. The principal, who knew a little of her story, understood and wished her well. During the trip, Catherine shared about the 2 years she spent in treatment and the last year working as a teacher. She had recovered from her depression and health struggles, but had carried a constant ache from being apart from her daughter. "I dreamed about you every night, Emily," she said, turning to look at her daughter in the back seat. "I imagined how you were growing up, if you were happy, if you remembered me. I always remembered you, Mom. And Aunt Martha told me stories about when you were little. She said you were just like me, that you loved flowers and reading books. Did Martha take good care of you?" "She was the only person who was kind to me in Grandpa's house," Emily said honestly. "Uncle Michael and Aunt Jennifer didn't like me." Catherine looked at her father with a questioning expression, and he explained everything he had discovered about Michael and Jennifer's behavior. Catherine was horrified to learn that her daughter had spent 3 years being treated as a family disgrace. Where are they now? Out of my house and out of our lives, Dr. William replied firmly. Some mistakes are unforgivable. When they arrived home, Martha greeted them at the door with a huge smile. She had spent the day transforming Catherine's old pink room into a space fit for Emily. Catherine's old dolls were arranged on the shelves, and new children's books sat on the desk. Martha, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for Emily, Catherine said, hugging the housekeeper. No need to thank me, dear. Taking care of her was a joy. She's a special girl. That night, they dined together at the dining table, but this time it was different. There was no tension or secrets. Emily sat between her mother and grandfather, finally in the place that should have always been hers. Grandpa, can I eat at the big table all the time now? Emily asked. Always, my princess. This is your home and you are part of this family. In the weeks that followed, the Anderson household underwent a complete transformation. Catherine decorated Emily's room with bright colors and new toys. Dr. William set up a children's library in his office so his granddaughter could stay with him while he worked. Martha smiled genuinely for the first time in 3 years. Emily blossomed like a flower, finally receiving sunlight and water. She began attending a nearby private school, where she quickly made friends and excelled in her studies. In the evenings, Catherine helped her with homework, and Dr. William told stories about their family and his travels around the world. A month after their reunion, Dr. William called Catherine into his office for a serious conversation. Emily was playing in the garden with Martha, who had become more like a grandmother than a housekeeper to her. Catherine, I need to ask you an important question, Dr. William said. Of course, Dad. Are you happy here? Or do you feel like you're sacrificing your independence because of Emily? Catherine smiled and took her father's hands. Dad, I've never been happier in my life. Being here, watching Emily grow up in a loving home, seeing you become the wonderful grandfather you always were in your heart. This is all I've ever wanted. What about the future? Do you have any plans? Dreams you'd like to pursue? I've been thinking about going back to school, maybe getting a master's in education, and I'd love to work with underprivileged children, teaching those who don't have opportunities. How about we start a foundation, Dr. William suggested. We could use part of the family fortune to build schools and support centers for vulnerable children. Catherine's eyes lit up. Really, Dad? You'd do that? Of course. Emily taught me that money means nothing if it's not used for good. And you've always had a generous heart for these causes. They spent hours planning the project. It would be a network of educational centers for underprivileged children, focusing not just on traditional schooling, but also on emotional support and talent development. Catherine would be the educational coordinator, and Dr. William would handle the administrative and financial aspects. 6 months later, the Emily Foundation, named in honor of the girl who had reunited the family, was officially inaugurated. The first center opened in an underprivileged community in the southern part of New York City, and within a few months, it was already serving over 200 children. Emily, now 10 years old, regularly visited the foundation's centers with her mother and grandfather. She loved playing with the other children and helping with recreational activities. Her experience of suffering had developed in her a special empathy for those going through hardships. Mommy, why don't some kids have a family like ours? Emily asked during one of these visits. Sometimes life isn't fair, sweetheart, but that's why there are people like you, me, and Grandpa who want to help make the world a little better. When I grow up, I want to work at the foundation too. And you'll be able to if you want. But first, you need to study hard and become a wise, strong woman. Like you, Mommy? I hope you'll be even better than me, Emily. I hope you never have to go through the pain I did to learn life's important lessons. A year after the family's reunion, Dr. William made a decision that surprised everyone. He announced he was retiring from business to dedicate himself fully to his family and the foundation. At 64, I've learned that success isn't measured by how much money we accumulate, but by how much love we share, he said during a ceremony at the company. I lost precious years with my daughter and granddaughter because I was always traveling and working. I won't make the same mistake twice. the company was sold to a group of investors who guaranteed all jobs would be kept. With the proceeds from the sale, Dr. Williams significantly expanded the foundation's endowment, ensuring it could operate indefinitely. Catherine completed her master's degree in education with a thesis on the impact of family abandonment on child development, inspired by her own experience and Emily's. She became a leading voice on the subject and began giving lectures at universities about the importance of family support for vulnerable children. Martha, who had always been more than an employee, was officially adopted as a family member. She was given a room in the main wing of the house and a lifelong allowance, continuing to care for Emily with the love of a grandmother. 3 years after the reunion, when Emily turned 12, the family organized a special celebration. It wasn't just to mark her birthday, but to celebrate the complete transformation of their lives. The party was held in the garden, decorated with Emily's favorite flowers, sunflowers. Among the guests were some of the children supported by the foundation, Emily's school friends, and families who had been helped by their social projects. During the party, Dr. William asked for everyone's attention to give a speech. 3 years ago, I was a man rich in money but poor in love. I lived in a big, empty house, surrounded by people who only cared about my fortune. Today, I'm truly rich because I have what no money can buy, a united family and the certainty that we're making a difference in others' lives. He looked at Emily, who was wearing a bright yellow dress and the golden locket she had never taken off since. Emily, my princess, you taught us that true love knows no barriers, that a child can have more wisdom than many adults, that forgiveness is more powerful than holding on to anger. Thank you for bringing our family back together. Emily stood up and hugged her grandfather, then reached out to her mother and Martha. There, in the flower-filled garden surrounded by the people who truly mattered, they realized they had found what they'd always been searching for, a true home. "Grandpa," said Emily, her voice no longer that of a little girl, but of a dream-filled preteen. "Thank you for finding me in that closet and showing me I was worth so much more than I thought." "No, my dear. Thank you for showing me what really matters in life." Catherine watched the scene and smiled. The locket around Emily's neck glimmered in the light of the setting sun, and she remembered the words she had written in the letter years ago. "She's a special girl. She has your generous heart and her mother's intelligence." The prophecy had come true. Emily had grown up in an environment of love and had become exactly what Catherine had hoped, a strong, smart, and deeply compassionate girl. And most importantly, she had been the catalyst that brought the whole family back to love. That evening, after all the guests had left, the family gathered in the living room. Emily lay on the couch with her head in Catherine's lap, while Dr. William and Martha organized the gifts she had received. "Mum, do you regret anything?" Emily suddenly asked. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because sometimes I think if you hadn't met my dad, you wouldn't have suffered so much, and I wouldn't have been born." Catherine gently stroked her daughter's hair. "Emily, I don't regret a thing. Not the pain, not the mistakes, not the hardships. Do you know why? Why? Because all of it led me to you, and you are the best thing that's ever happened to me." "And to me too," said Dr. William, joining them on the couch. "You taught me it's never too late to start over, and that a family's love can heal any wound." Martha smiled from the armchair, where she was knitting a sweater for one of the children at the foundation. "And you taught me that caring for the ones we love isn't work. It's a privilege." Emily sat up and looked at each of them. "So does that mean we'll never be apart again?" "Never again," they all answered at once, their voices echoing through the house like a sacred promise. Years later, when Emily graduated with a degree in psychology and took over as director of the Emily Foundation, she often shared her story with the children in their programs. She told them that no matter how dark the closet someone forces us to hide in, there will always be a crack where love can slip through. And sometimes, the person who saves us is closer than we think, just waiting for the chance to discover we exist. Emily's story became an example of resilience and forgiveness, inspiring hundreds of families to reconcile and thousands of children to believe they deserve love exactly as they are. At the entrance of the Emily Foundation headquarters, a plaque bears the words that sum up their entire philosophy. No child should have to hide to exist. Every love we give comes back multiplied. And every time Emily looks at that plaque, she touches the golden locket around her neck and whispers a "thank you, Miss" to the brave girl who once found the strength to step out of the closet and change an entire family's destiny. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you've had a similar family experience or know someone who's faced situations like these, share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Do you believe forgiveness can truly heal wounds as deep as the Anderson families? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for being here with us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.